Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. Have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. We're going to start with that horrific news out of Minneapolis, 2 dead after a mass shooting. We'll break down what we know about the shooter. He did post a manifesto, so we'll get into all of that. We also have some interesting stories that are developing as the Trump administration attempts to charge mostly protesters in the context of the National Guard takeover of LA and DC. Juries not impressed with the attempts to charge multiple. They've rejected multiple indictments at this point. So very interesting dynamic that is developing there. We've got another very somber story about a teenager who committed suicide. His parents are actually blaming ChatGPT. So it's a test for AI, and also obviously begs some larger societal questions about the impact of this AI technology. We've got a couple guests joining us today. We've got Graham Plattner. He is challenging Susan Collins in Maine for the Senate, has made quite a bit of waves. So very excited to speak with him. We have Jeffrey Sachs, who's going to join us to break down the latest with regard to the Trump administration's approach in Gaza. This comes as we get word that Jared Kushner and Tony Blair are now getting involved in whatever the quote unquote day after is going to be. So certainly a lot to get to there. We are also going to take a look at a couple other stories with regard to Israel. Anna Kasparian absolutely cooking a CNN panel. Got some of the highlights for you there. And Saagar's also going to give us an update on that alleged Israeli pedophile who was allowed to flee the country. He had a court date, and Saagar, he didn't show up for that.
He did not show up. That's right. Guys, you're going to notice Ryan will actually be in for a couple of segments. I had a personal thing just come up at the last minute. So thank you very much to Ryan and for Krystal and for all of you for coping with that. But yeah, Krystal, let's go ahead and get to Minneapolis. Just a horrific story.
Yeah, absolutely. So 2 children killed in a shooting at a Catholic church and school. We do have the shooter also killed himself. And so we have his identity and some information emerging about who he is and at least what he says he was up to here. Let's go ahead and take a listen to the local police chief describing the horror of the scene.
Earlier today, just before 8:30 a.m., our city experienced an unthinkable tragedy. Minneapolis police officers responded to a report of a shooting at a mass that was happening at the Annunciation Roman Catholic Church on the block behind me. This worship service was marking the first week of school for children that are attending the Annunciation Catholic School. During the mass, a gunman approached on the outside on the side of the building and began firing a rifle through the church windows towards the children sitting in the pews at the mass. Shooting through the windows, he struck children and worshipers that were inside the building. The shooter was armed with a rifle, a shotgun, and a pistol. 2 young children, ages 8 and 10, were killed where they sat in the pews. Their parents have been notified. 17 other people were injured, 14 of them being children. 2 of those children are in critical condition. The coward who fired these shots ultimately took his own life in the rear of the church. The question from Matt was, how are the injured students doing? I believe all of them have their parents with them now. And they are all expected to survive. All of the remaining victims are expected to survive. There is a range of injuries, however.
So at least some good news there at the end that the remaining victims who were injured are expected to survive. But 2 lives taken here, just absolutely horrific. Apparently what had unfolded is at this Catholic school, which, is for kids grades K through 8. They have an annual tradition of a back-to-school mass, and the murderer here actually had attended this school and was likely familiar with this tradition. And he shot through the windows, so he didn't come into the school. He actually shot through the windows, and that was the way he was able to create this mass carnage. CNN actually interviewed one of the 5th grade students who described what he saw unfold and the way one of his close friends was actually shot and injured during the melee. Let's go ahead and take a listen to that.
The shots fired, and then we kind of got under the pews. It kind of, they shot through the stained glass windows, I think. And it was really scary.
What did you do after that?
Well, we waited like 10 to 5 minutes. I don't really know. And then we went to the gym, and then the doors locked just to make sure he didn't come. And we waited in the gym for more news, and everyone was okay. Or most people were okay.
Who are your friend, Wes?
My friend got hit in the back.
Did he go to the hospital?
Yeah, he went to the hospital.
What went through your mind when you saw that?
I was super scared for him.
And obviously, it breaks your heart to think about the families who have now lost their children, the kids who were, directly injured, hit by gunfire, and are, now having to deal with these horrific injuries that may impact them for their whole lives. But then you also just think about a little kid like this and what sort of trauma he's going to experience. I mean, the horror of, having to interview kids about experiencing these mass shootings and what this is going to do to them for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, that's right. It's a very, very difficult, to just not only, we've covered a number of these, and to watch kind of the way that it all unfolds, just so horrific to target children literally first day of school. There's not much else on a human level that you can really say about it. In terms of the stuff that we've learned about the gunman here, almost immediately some of the social media postings came out and some of the identifying information, which has caused a lot of discussion. The local news actually in Minneapolis did quite a good job of compiling some of this together. I know there's been quite a lot floating out there. Some of it actually was incorrect, but they did a good job of combing through the YouTube video that was posted, some 22-minute long so-called manifesto. I'm going to warn everybody, it is very disturbing to watch. It's very, unfortunately, having covered so many of these, all the hallmarks of many of the previous ones, and in fact, some explicit ones of callbacks to previous mass shooters. We'll get into some of the potential, quote, inspiration and all of this in a little bit, but we're just going to show you in their own words. Again, I'm going to warn everybody, this is disturbing to watch, but let's go ahead and take a listen.
One of the more jarring images from the videos is this one, the arsenal of guns and ammo on display. Something many of you may have noticed is the written words and names on some of the weapons. One of the guns says, "Kill Trump," and others have the names of notable mass shooters, including Ruppnow, likely a reference to Natalie Ruppnow, the suspected mass shooter in Madison last year. The name Robert Bowers is also written on one of the weapons. He was responsible for the deadliest attack on the Jewish community. We don't know when this video was shot, but there is a reference to tomorrow. Take a listen.
Tomorrow. I'm sorry to my family. But that's it. That's the only people I'm sorry to. Those kids.
It's really disturbing to listen to. In addition to the guns and ammo, the video also flips through these pages of what appears to be a manifesto. It's addressed to my family and friends, saying in part, "I'm a sad person, haunted by these thoughts that do not go away. I know this is wrong, but I can't seem to stop myself." In another video, this one, Westman shows a different letter written in another language, and ending with this map. It appears to be of a church, possibly a critical clue for investigators.
So we were seeing there the drawing of the map. As you said, Krystal, the connections there to the school, including the mother of the gunman who apparently had worked there. But all of really, all I could take away from this, and this really fits with our ChatGPT story, is just the way that the internet is. I'm not going to say enabling because it's blaming, but like we are just witnessing these like darkest corners of the internet encourage. Inspire, work together, perhaps in some case, for people who are full-blown mentally ill, to fulfill their worst desires and to try and get some sort of notoriety. Like, I don't think it's an accident, actually, that many of the hallmarks of the Christchurch shooting to Robert Bowers, so many of these other people were included in there. I know, part of the discussion here is that this is part of also kind of the sickness of our culture. Almost immediately afterwards, there was, kind of the using of the markings and of the manifesto to immediately start to try and make points. So, for example, like many of the anti-Israel sayings were immediately picked up by people who are pro-Israel to say, see, this is an inspiration of the anti-Israel, movement. Or, for example, the shooter appears to have been transgender, changed their name sometime in the year around 17 with a signature by the mother. But if you put it all together, I mean, effectively what we all witnessed was like the creation of the internet. I think you said something around, it's like almost like a Jubilee style creation. We have a trans Nazi here who murdered 2 children. All of the markings and everything there is purely a creation of the absolute worst dregs and part of the internet. And so I don't know, everyone's trying to make bigger points and all this. And obviously, we've had debates, and my feelings on transgenderism and all of that are clear. But like my biggest takeaway here really is just about the role of the internet. And I don't know if there is a plea or whatever to be made, but it's like, please just watch what your children are doing on the internet. Like, there's almost just certainly that this is something that has been going on for years and years. All the hallmarks of mental illness, drug use apparently in the past, which could possibly have contributed to a psychotic break, which connects to all of this. And I don't know, to the extent that there's a national conversation or whatever, like that's my biggest takeaway. I don't know what else to say.
I mean, I think, what everybody wants to know immediately is, okay, how were the guns procured? The guns were purchased legally. Right. So that's one piece. And then you start digging into the social media postings. And I did watch this entire manifesto, which if you want to find online, you can. There were all sorts. You saw the markings on the weaponry that was used. And yeah, it was all over them. It was, hatred towards Donald Trump. It was hatred towards Jews. It was anti-Black. It was anti-Hispanic. It had symbols of the occult. There was all sorts of like internet slang. One of them literally said skibbity. And I mean, and that's why, to your point, this murderer feels like this very modern creation, right? And that's not to say, look, we don't know. He writes in his manifesto about how sick he is in the head and how depressed he is and how suicidal he is. And obviously he ends up killing himself as, part of this horrific mass shooting that takes the lives of 2 innocent children who were there, at mass at their school on first day of school, and traumatizes all the rest and traumatizes an entire community, which I also want to mention just as a reminder. Minneapolis was also the site of where that gunman murdered a state legislator and her husband, and attacked a number of other state legislators. So the city has really just been going through some absolute horrors lately. But I have no idea if this is truly the case. A lot of people are theorizing that he may have been radicalized, or, his whatever sick ideology sort of exacerbated by this online cult. Frankly, I'd never heard of it before yesterday, so I'm far from an expert. But there's a sort of online Telegram and other social media network cult called 764. It's affiliated with another one called 09A. Both of them are these sick death cults where people egg each other on to commit violent acts on camera and the more horrific the violent act, including up to and including, shootings and suicide, the more clout you gain in the community. There seemed to be some indications in his writing that he was looking for this sort of notoriety, and certainly the callbacks to other shooters, would indicate that sort of desire, which is part of why, guys, I'm making an intentional choice. Not that it's not that it's a big thing, but not to say this individual's name, because why give him what he really wanted, which is this level of fame and notoriety. And so there are a few pieces that people are pointing to when they're drawing these conclusions. As I said, it's like the neo-Nazi stuff, the online internet slang, the symbols of the occult, and also, and this is another weird one, there was a bunch of writing in the Russian script Cyrillic, but I actually think it was like a phonetic version of Cyrillic that translates into English. But anyway, the affiliation with the Russian language and this Russian symbology as well apparently people were drawing this connection to this sort of like online cult. And here's where the fact that this individual is transgender might fit in, because apparently these, these like death cults online, they intentionally prey upon people who are, struggling with their identity, who are going through mental health challenges, specifically like targeting the LGBTQ teenagers who are, who may be going through a lot in dealing with that queer identity. So there may actually be a connection. It's just not necessarily the one that, that the right wants to draw, that just like being trans makes you an evil murderer, which obviously there's zero evidence to support that. And other identity characteristics, you would not draw a similar conclusion. I actually saw Trey Gowdy get himself potentially into some trouble on Fox News, talking about how these shooters tend to be white men. But in any case, there's, I think it's a connection that's worth digging into. Whether or not this is actually what was going on with this guy or not, I suspect we'll learn more over the coming weeks and months.
Right. And I think this is important because you're right. This is immediately what I think is unfortunate. And look, my feelings on transgenderism are very clear. Like, I think, mental illness is a massive part of the rise in all of this. But looking at this, I really don't know how you could take away a quote unquote one-dimensional view, because this is just internet to me. By the way, I think that's a big part of the trans story. But unfortunately, looking at what you were talking about, again, I have covered so many of these. I watched Christchurch live, which I really wish I had never done that because I was covering that in the newsroom. And then to see that all being redone, again, or for example, that Texas church shooting, I did a lot of reporting actually on the background of that individual and how they were never supposed to be able to purchase a gun. It was a massive screw up by the United States Navy and the reporting into the database. And now there's all this conversation, et cetera. But like, I truly believe this is an entirely, like you said, a modern creation of the internet, where the trans part, the neo-Nazi, the whatever, all of the Russian satanic occult, including apparently, like you were saying, we were digging into this, and there's like pedophilia, that apparently has been linked to all of this as well. This is a sickness which is all 100% empowered by these Now, I'm not some disinformation censorship person at all. And I know I'm thinking about all that stuff, like in the context of this. I want to hammer home to people about the sickness of what mental illness and the internet, and how those two things have come together to create this like deeply sick phenomenon. And like you said, there's still a lot of questions. A lot of the, I'm not immediately going to go out. This person was 23 years old. And so, of course, they're an adult. And, at the end of the day, whether you were, someone told you to do something or not, like, you own and have total responsibility.
Of course.
But, you don't just acquire all this weaponry and all these guns and have all these signs of full-blown mental illness for like 5 years and nobody know anything about it. And so, that's where some of the community and perhaps family members and all these people need to answer some questions here as to what exactly knew and when, interactions with law enforcement. I also want to hammer that home. In almost every single case of these mass shootings known to law enforcement it always happens. It's like, oh, there were like 99 different and this happened in Parkland. Like I said, it happened with the Texas shooting. It's happened with so many of these different ones where there were many opportunities actually to, at the very least, like have a flag. Somebody either said something, and then if somebody didn't say something, I think that also, I would hope that comes to light, because a lot of these people always get off scot-free.
Well, you raise a really important point. I don't have this confirmed, but people online have surfaced some of this individual's postings where he was out and out saying, I'm going to go and shoot up a church.
Right.
I'm going to be a mass shooter. I'm going to go kill children. What music should I post? And asking for advice. And if that was truly out there on the internet, you also have to ask some questions about, where the hell is the FBI? Yeah, I mean, how is this not? And then when, which does connect to potentially a broader conversation about, we see these FBI agents who are like, picking up garbage in the streets of DC, when maybe they should have been focused on what was going on, in this sick individual's head, who was out posting in the open. Again, I don't have it confirmed, but this is what people are surfacing online.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks likely this person was out there posting in the open what their intentions were, and law enforcement, as far as we know, didn't see it or did nothing about it or whatever.
Yeah, and we're going to hear, and that's the thing. Again, I want to hammer this on. Parkland, known to literally Pulse. I have covered so many of these over the decade that every single time it comes forward, known to this, known to that, and same with the parent, anybody else in the community. If you knew this person, you didn't say anything, or if you had any inklings whatsoever, I don't know. I mean, again, I think that should be a real living in infamy moment. So I don't have much else to say other than please, watch what your children are doing on the internet. I mean, I know that sounds crazy and almost tisk-tisky or whatever, but this does not just happen overnight. It also, it takes hours, potentially years, and more likely, considering the track of how this all gone, of years of these signs of full-blown mental illness. And, to the extent that people looked the other way or wanted to empower mental illness or whatever, I think that is all very, very important for the conversation. So, the last thing is just, 2 children are dead. And the worst part is all these kids, it's incredible that they survive, but they're going to have to live with this forever. And the parents and anybody else, as a new parent for me, I guess it's just hitting home. This is the first one I've had to cover since then. I can't imagine. I really can't.
No, you truly can't. And, my kids' public schools this year, and we live out in the country, very safe area, same town I grew up in. They decided they needed to install metal detectors this year. And it's like, on the one hand, it's I'm glad they're taking their safety seriously. On the other hand, it's such a sick indictment of our society that is a necessary thing to do at an elementary school. So in any case, we'll continue to follow the story, and, anything that comes to light that helps inform a national conversation so we can avoid some of these horrific tragedies in the future. But it also feels pretty hopeless given that they just continue and nothing changes.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.